Welcome everyone to my reading of Dragon Hunter. It's the third book in the Maripi Moon young adult science fiction series. And this story follows the two characters named Ace and Odette. And if you've read the second book, then Odette is mentioned, but Ace is just a completely new character. So this one, I went in a little different direction. It is an environmental type mystery where it talks a lot about the effects of pollution and how that affects an ecosystem. In this case, it would be in reference to a dragonfly's ecosystem, a lake or a pond. And I've introduced one new Maripi and then another race that was mentioned in the last book. I've expanded that one. So Ace is probably my favorite male character that I've ever written. I really like him a lot. He's starts off kind of the black sheep type of character, and then he goes through so many things. I put him through torture in this book, and then he comes out the other side, I think, really well. So Ace is a mist Maripi, and that's based on the dragonfly. So they have a lot of characteristics of dragonflies, and my husband actually came up with the name of the mist Maripi because I'm terrible at naming things. And so he came up with that. And so their race is a lot more of a military-based race, like a dragonfly. They're very territorial. So the mist Maripi are very territorial. They're very aggressive, but they're also a lot of fun. They love having fun. They love partying and enjoying spending time together. A very social group of people. Odette is a Gorham, and that comes from the pronunciation of the Irish color for blue. And the Gorham are the first people that I've done that are an elemental type people. They can control water, they can become water and ice and mist and things like that. And that makes up their type of person. The community of Gorham lives down under the water in an isolated commune, so they're completely different than the mist. But Odette lives with her uncle in the town. So this township was based heavily on two places I've visited and absolutely loved. And the first was our honeymoon in Quebec City. It was absolutely amazing. And I based the town in this book on Quebec City. They have this huge city up on the cliff, and then it comes down by the water. Then they've got the industrial part down by the water and the market and everything. So this city in here is based heavily on Quebec City, as well as some of the buildings are based on places in Quebec City, like the Chateau Frontenac inspired the dome in this book. So the other place that inspired this story was New Orleans. We spent some time with my mom in New Orleans several years ago, and I really enjoyed that a lot. So the lower part of the town is called the Swamp District in the Pier, and that's based on South Louisiana. And then the town of Lockville, where Ace is from, is heavily based on New Orleans. All their houses are like this, they're perched up high above the water on top of this giant set of lily. It's called the Great Lily, so it's like bunches and bunches of huge lily pads. And all of their town is up on that. And so there's different sections that are based on the different types of dragonflies and all that. So I've gone into great detail explaining all that in the book, so I won't go into that. We'd be here all day long. But there's a whole lot of scene setting to try to immerse you into the setting, because the story only takes place over 3 days. So I didn't have time during the 3-day time span to take you on a tour. So I had to kind of up front explain what the place is like. So I hope that you feel welcome and excited as you're coming into this town. So I'm going to describe a little bit about what I'm going to read, and then I'll get started. The first scene sets you right into some of the action, and it's written from the point of view of a non-human character. She is a water dragon called a Leviathan, which is the Hebrew word for Leviathan. And she is the third point of view in this book. It's the first non-human point of view I've written. And she's very innocent. She doesn't have a human thought pattern. She's a very innocent, straightforward type of thinker. And she just knows, I either do what I need to do or I don't do what I need to do. And so she provides kind of a balance between Ace and Odette. So that's the first point of view I'm going to read. Her name is Crawlia, which is like Hira all jumbled up together. And the lake is called Loch Hira, but that didn't work very well, so I did like Hira for her name. The other 2 points of view, of course, are Ace and Odette, and I've decided to skip the first part and take you to read when they first meet each other, because I think that's a lot more fun than going through the descriptions. So I believe that is everything I wanted to say up front. So let's get started. Twisting and twirling, Crawlia frolicked in the crystal clear water of Loch Hira. Her tightly woven aquamarine scales glittered in the afternoon starlight, just under the surface of the loch. It was her favorite place on the moon, so close to her symbiote, even if the Gishka didn't know it yet. The other Leviathan had given up on bonding with their symbiotes, having been chased from the loch by the mist 100 years prior. But not Crawlia. A pull stronger than anything she'd ever felt drew her back from the sea down the long winding channel of the River Luna to the loch, the place of her hatching. There she waited patiently. The Gishka would come to her when the time was right. It would be soon, she knew. Her sleek, coiling body, with its 3 expert pairs of flippers, pulsed with anticipation. If she could have smiled with her thick hide and razor-sharp teeth, she would have. The fanned crest on her head gave her a stately appearance like the crown of royalty. She knew she was one of the most beautiful Leviathan ever created, but more than that, she was loyal, strong, and brave, a perfect complement to her symbiote. Now, if the Gishka would just get its act together. A ripple in the water drew Crawlia's attention to the other side of the loch. Breaking the surface with her regal crest, she looked with luminous teal eyes toward the huge smoking town on the north bank. It had been built when she was but a hatchling over 100 years ago, but she knew to stay far away. The creatures that lived there weren't amiable to the Leviathan and hired the mist to drive them out. They had succeeded until now. Using her sharp vision, she scanned the shoreline, stopping at one particular building. It was a massive, ugly brick structure with towering, soot-covered smokestacks, which coughed out clouds of noxious green fumes. A black mouth on its side yawned ominously, making her shiver in fear. But what of the ripple? With a deft flick of her lengthy tail, Crawlia glided through the water closer to the void. Halfway across the loch, she made out a trickle of fluorescent water coming from the black mouth. Closer, she raised her scaly head enough to see it pooling on the surface of the water. What was it? Cautiously, Crawlia approached the foreign substance. She sniffed it, detecting an unpleasant, acrid odor. Rising out of the water, she saw that the loch's current had dispersed the foul liquid farther afield. She was surrounded on all sides. Panicking, she splashed frantically, causing the substance to churn into the water below. Diving under the surface, she swam as far as she could away from the toxic waste, but it was too late. It had already touched her. So from his place in the shadows, Ace watched the pair struggle. He had seen his target enter the restaurant with a companion. After a time, they emerged onto the terrace. All he needed was a clear shot, and he would be on his way. Looking through the scope, he made out the form of a petite young woman. In the dim light, he couldn't tell anything more about her, but he was becoming increasingly uneasy of Rigel's treatment of her. Not only that, but the man kept her right in his shot. But he couldn't know Ace was watching him. He hadn't told a soul of his mission. Forcing down his frustration, he concentrated on the couple. It was clearly not a romantic rendezvous. He knew that from experience. However, of the 3 damsels he'd courted, none of them turned out to be his bride cutter. He bit back a sigh. The girl had been struggling, but now she was still. Rigel lowered his head to whisper in her ear. Ace had a clear shot, but if he took it, the man's egotistical head would explode all over the girl. He couldn't bear to do that to her. When she let out an ear-piercing scream, Ace decided he had enough. Aborting the mission, he darted over the space between the buildings and hooked Rigel around the neck. "Let her go," he growled, pulling backwards. "Unhand me," Rigel choked out. The girl, a Gorham by the looks of it, stared at him with round, terrified eyes. He clocked Rigel over the head, knocking him out. "What did you do to him?" she whispered in unbridled fascination. "Get out of here we must," he replied, grabbing her about the waist of her dark puffy gown and pushing into the air. She wiggled and squirmed, her small body becoming slippery and wet, but he held her tightly as he'd been taught to do. Even though she could liquefy, she couldn't lose her structure. As long as he kept a firm grip, he had her. "Let me go, miss," she screamed. "Let you go here, in the air?" he asked, dropping a few feet. "Ah!" she shrieked, solidifying. "What is wrong with you?" When he didn't respond, so she continued. "Take me home. I can tell you where I live." "Not a chance, Gorham." "Pardon?" "Heard me, you did. You saw me. Rigel, I know not. Risk it? No." "You speak strangely," she sulked. "I do not like you at all." "Odd is your speech as well." He shifted her to face him. Her natural reaction was to put her arms around his neck for security. "Be still," he continued. "My nose is tickled by your feathers. Drop you I might." Grabbing her headpiece, she flung it into the night air. "Will you please take me home?" she asked again, looking up at him fearfully. "Safe your home will not be when Rigel awakens. Am I right?" Her eyes grew wider. "I will be all right. I have a plan." While he was curious about that comment, he didn't have time to deal with it. "I cannot," he replied, flying faster. "I must needs think what to do." "I am rich. I will pay you," she begged. "How much do you want?" "No need of money do I have," he replied, eyes flicking to hers. "Come now, I will not hurt you." "How can I trust you?" she snapped. "You kidnapped me." Her body grew cold, very cold, but he held her close. The whirring of his wings kept his temperature up, but he wasn't sure how long it would last. As no Gorham volunteered as a training prop for the Miss Flying Corps, this was his first physical contact with one. Direct interaction with the pacifist Gorham was extremely rare, but the higher-ups took no chances. Their motto, beware the quiet ones. Thinking quickly, he rolled their bodies in a tight corkscrew. "Do you wish me to drop you?" he retorted. "Certain death it would be." Instead of screaming, she iced her hands to his back and hung on for dear life. Her trembling filled him with guilt. He really shouldn't have scared her with that corkscrew, but at least she was quiet now. He gently shifted her into a cradle hold. Having failed in his final test, and with the Gorham female in tow, he could hardly return to the clan. What was he thinking, putting sympathy before his mission? Compassion was not a part of an assassin's code. Ruthless, merciless, and cold, those were the traits of a proper assassin. Nevertheless, somewhere deep in his heart, he knew he'd done the right thing. Why? He wasn't sure. "Promise I will not hurt you," he said kindly. "Safe you are with me." "What good is the word of a mist?" she muttered, before settling down for the long haul. She was quiet as they flew out of town and across the loch. As he looked down at the black waters, he thought he saw a shimmering beneath the calm waves. He shook his head and looked again. No, it must have been Ezra's reflection. On the dark side of the loch lay a dense forest known as the Dark Woods. The canopy overhead was so thick that it allowed little light to penetrate to the floor below. Strange creatures were seen coming out to drink from the loch late in the evening. Tales of monsters kept little ones from venturing there, but even adults didn't visit the dark woods. No one would ever find them. Landing on the top of a tree, he sat the girl down on a thick branch. She took one look over the side and tightened her grip. "Please do not let go of me. I will fall." Wide as the branch scorned, falling would be difficult. She still didn't let him go. "No, I am afraid. Let us go farther down." "Safe you are," he replied, patting her back awkwardly. "No harm will come to you on my watch." "You are used to perching in trees," she murmured into his leather shirt, "but I am not. Please." "Monsters, they say, live on the floor of the dark woods. Safer we are up high. Come now, I will not let you fall." Reluctantly, she stepped back, surveying the wider space nearest the trunk. "I will go there," she said, pointing. As she turned, her feet tangled in her long skirts. Ace caught her before she hurtled over the edge. Once again, she clung to him like a baby monkey. "A knife I have," he whispered, gently lifting her to the tree trunk. "I will cut off some length." Her aquamarine eyes rounded as he drew out his silver penknife, but she didn't resist. Carefully, he sliced off the bottom half of her skirt and petticoat. A little ragged, perhaps, but much more practical. "I need to borrow your knife," she said, holding out her hand. "No." She stomped her foot. "My corset, miss. I will not permit you that intimacy." "As for that, I would not," he replied, reddening. "Privacy you shall have." After handing over the penknife, he flew out of range. Would he regret giving her a weapon? Most likely, but he'd heard horrible things about corsets. If ever there was a device of torture, that was it. And once the mist dragon was out of sight, Odette wiggled out of her gown and slipped through her corset. Ripping it the rest of the way, she breathed deeply, filling her lungs with the cool forest air. She shimmied out of her hoop frame to reveal long white bloomers. Using the penknife, she removed the frills from her cuffs and neckline. Next, she hiked her bloomers up over her knees. Her blue satin slippers looked up at her. "Most impractical," she muttered, wishing she'd worn her leather boots. Then she scanned the darkness around her. "Miss, I am finished." When he didn't answer, her heart began to race. It would be just like one of those barbarians to leave her up the tree to die. The mists were nothing but a bunch of hoodlums and heathens partying and running amok. What had he even been doing on the terrace that he could come to her rescue? And some rescue it was. She was stuck out here in the dark all alone. How was she ever to get home? "Mist!" she screamed. "Come back!" "Quiet," the dragon hissed, standing in front of her with a handful of berries and a large dead rodent. "Think I was going to leave you?" "How should I know your intentions? You kidnapped me." "Not the word I would use. Try helped." Steaming, she jabbed her finger at his chest. "If you had taken me home, I would have called you my hero. That man is using me. However, as you did not, you are no better than he." Snarling, he thrust her hand aside. "Got in the way of my shot, you did. I thought to take mercy, help you out. Some thanks I get." "Your shot?" she repeated quietly, fearfully, noting the sniper skeet poking over his shoulder. The dragon, breathing hard, stared at her through iridescent eyes, one blue and one green. His skin was a dark mahogany with swirls and loops of black tattoos. Shaggy black hair with a greenish tint hung over one brow, but a large portion of one side was trimmed short. In it, he had shaved 3 parallel lines running from front to back. Trailing down from the shaggy side was a thin braid tied in brown leather, which matched his rough outfit. She had seen Mist before, but never so close. "Never you mind," he replied. "I brought dinner." Her eyes dropped to the limp rodent. "Pardon?" "A feast will be when cooked." "How will you prepare it up here?" she asked, crossing her arms. He nodded to his right. "A high hollow I have found. We will camp there." Opening his arm, which was bare, well-muscled, and covered with more of the curious tattoos, he motioned her to him. "Shall we, my lady?" "Chivalry will get you nowhere," she said, complying. She wasn't about to be left behind. It wasn't too far a flight when they came to the hollow. Rough but sheltered, the space had a solid floor and a cushy layer of leaves for bedding. Before coming back for her, the mist had cleared a spot in the center of the hollow, laid a firestone, and set up a small hearth. Odette watched fascinated as he struck a fire and prepared their meal. If it were up to her, they would have starved. While the rodent meat cooked, they prepared 2 beds on opposite sides of the space. Odette pinched herself several times to confirm it wasn't a nightmare, but every time she came to the same conclusion. This night was very real. She was trapped alone with a Miss Dragon in the middle of the dark woods. She was like the princess locked in the tower her nanny had read about. There was no escape. She glanced over as he turned the skin rodent flesh. He claimed he meant her no harm, and indeed he had saved her from Rigel. Did he really have a valid reason to hold her? What did he intend to do with her? When the mist declared the meal ready, he motioned to the spot next to him. Against her better judgment, specifically a Miss Dragon and dead rodent flesh, she sat cross-legged with him to eat. He handed her a smaller portion of the meat and half of the berries before ripping into it with his teeth. Taking a nibble, Odette found it wasn't horrible and dove right in. Your name, Gorham? The dragon asked between bites. Odette, she muttered, popping a berry into her mouth. You? Ace. What business have you with Rigel? She grunted. Where do I begin? You would not understand. Try me. Mon Rigel wishes to join me for my fortune. He is not in love with me, and I could never love him. Fortune? He inquired, lowering his meal from his mouth. Rich, you said, but I thought you were joking. No Gorham are rich. Had it been a mistake to mention riches? Would he hold her for ransom? What did she know of his true intentions? When he smiled sympathetically, her traitorous heart flipped over. The mist was a handsome one. She gave him that. Okay, so if you want to find out if they ever stop fighting with each other and what happens, then you've got to read the rest of the book. And I forgot to mention that Ace's speech pattern is a little bit like Yoda. But that was inspired by how done in Cajun country. They have a very strong accent. I wasn't going to try to mimic that, so I went with just a different cadence of speech. So does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, how you came to these characters.
Well, I don't know. Odette came into the second book, and I thought after I wrote about her uncle, if you remember her uncle, I don't want to give any spoilers away to the video, but I thought it would be interesting to explore what happened with her after that, because it seemed like almost like a Regency type problem with rich girl. And then Ace, I think I just wanted to write a bad boy. He wasn't really a bad boy, but kind of that bad boy turn good kind of thing. Even though I wouldn't really classify him as a bad boy, but his past is a little rough, and he's just different. He's a lot of fun. He's sarcastic, and he's unlike my other heroes in that sense. So I'm not sure.
Well, thank you.
I wish I had a better answer. Any other questions? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that popped into my head. I don't think so. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming, and I hope you enjoy the reading.